Everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn how to build your buyer's confidence to accelerate growth, which is being presented by our amazing partner, Uniphore. We're joined in by Tim, who is the Director of Product Marketing at Uniphore, Scott, co founder and CEO of Praction, Ping, who is VP of RevOps at Leapsum, and last and certainly not least, Kyle, VP of Sales at Mad Kudu. We want to encourage you guys to please ask any questions that you may have during the webinar. We will answer them live. You can ask them in the Q&A section or in the comment section. Or if you're joining us from LinkedIn, you can just comment and tag either Rev Genius or Gina, which is me, and we'll make sure that our hosts see those and get those answered for you. So with that, Tim, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hey, Gina, thank you so much. It's fun to be on with this crowd. And, I'm going to go right to the chat. The first book that somebody just put out there was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And for anyone who's read that book, seeing the world through somebody else's lens is critical in sales or in business. So I'm going to go around the wheel real quick and get everybody's background and kind of share a little bit of your context and kind of how you see the world. Kyle, we introduced you last, so I'm going to start in reverse order. So Kyle, why don't you go first? Kind of how do you see the world? What's your role today, and what are you focused on?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's great to be here with Scott and Ping and the team. Really excited to dive into some of the topics that we have on hand. I've worked at a handful of private and publicly traded tech companies over the last 7 years, spanning sales development, account management, new business sales. I've seen quite a bit there. Currently leading new business sales at Mad Kudu, where we're helping go-to-market teams prioritize revenue-driving signals by mobilizing all of their data. How I view the world, wow, Tim, that is a big question. I think as it pertains to buyers in 2023, there's nothing more important than gaining trust and gaining trust early. Everything, right, is being run through the CFO. And so ensuring that there's a strong ROI case to be had at the end of the day is what is allowing us to continue to drive deals forward. But I'll save a little bit more for the end.
Thank you. And, as a VP of sales, it gets down to those final deals. You're watching things get to the finish line at the end of the quarter. And it's crazy the amount of people involved in those purchase decisions these days. Ping, I'll jump over to you. What kind of give us your background, where you sit today, and the company you work with?
Yeah, I'm Ping, and I've been in RevOps before RevOps was really a thing. In the last over 10 years, I've been in various startups. This is my 5th one. I joined Leapsum early this year. It's as I see people enablement becoming more and more important this day and age, as remote work is more and more a thing, and we have a lot of younger people joining the workforce. I'm definitely very honored to be here on the panel with Kyle and Scott, and you too, Tim. And to answer your question of how I see the world, again, tough question for sure. I've had a lot of help along the way in my career, and definitely see this as kind of buying as well, where you don't do it alone. It's a team sport. I'm sorry to bring up sports so early on. You help me, I help you kind of thing, the give and take, for sure.
Ping, I couldn't agree more. I think offline before this, we were talking how it's a team sport, both internally within our organizations to execute that sales process, but then also on our buyers' side, right? And all the things they have to do to make a deal work for them. Scott, I'll jump to you next. As a founder, I'm curious your perspective on all this and how we build confidence in 2023. Ooh, I think we might have lost Scott. So with that, we'll just kind of jump in and kind of start off our conversation. So before we got started and went live, we were talking about it starts initially with who you're going to sell to and aligning across the different teams internally of who you're going to sell to and how you're going to build that strategy, right? How you're going to segment those accounts, how you're going to look at the people in the buying group and identify those buyers. Kyle, as you're building your strategy for a year moving forward, some of us have just finished our end of quarter into fiscal, and you're building into that next year's plan. How do you start with your segmentation and your targeting? What did you do for some of your past companies that you can share?
Yeah, well, first off, I need to give a shout out to marketing as a whole. I'm thankful to have such a strong partner in Shannon Curran here at Mad Kudu. But I think if you're not aligned with marketing, it's really challenging to execute on a strategic plan, especially as it pertains to 2023. Right? Nobody is shy as it pertains to the challenges that we're all facing, and the economic downturn and everything that's going on in the world. But the reality is, if your product continues to deliver real business value, sales and marketing are aligned. I think it really comes back to, are we adding value on every single touch point across the buying journey? If not, none of us in this room and anybody that's in a buying center has the time to review something that isn't going to continue to move the ball down the field. And so I think it's critical as sellers and marketers for us to stand out from the pack. We do that in various ways, but it should be top of mind is trying to be seen as an outlier, especially on that initial engagement.
And how do you figure out who to engage? I mean, and like you said, it's a shout out to marketing. I think it's a joint effort. But when you're looking at those people, those personas inside of an account that say, these are the ones that are going to, for us, be our champions and move the ball forward internally, how do you identify those? And then Ping, I'll probably jump to you and say, how do you operationalize that, right? As kind of two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thankfully, shameless plug is what our product does. So we're not just taking a look at the data that exists in your CRM. We're looking at product usage data as well, really understanding like how many signups, what are these folks doing? How does that lead to a certain event? And when should sales engage with a free user, as an example? Right? Just because you have 100 free trial users coming from a Google doesn't mean Google is an enterprise account ready to be engaged with by sales. And so we're taking a look at all of the product data, all of the CRM data, really any data that we might have on a lead, making sense of that information, and then teeing it up to the right team. And so for us, we're thankful that we have the technology to help us do it.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, and Kyle, you touched.
Growth.
Sorry, Tim.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking from a product-led growth method, that's amazing. Now for companies maybe that aren't product-led growth or more enterprise, Ping, from a RevOps standpoint, how do you operationalize?
Yeah, I was just going to touch a little bit on what Kyle mentioned already, although he didn't use the word ICP, right? You said if it's the right kind of folks, you pass it on, you route them accordingly. Going back to ICP, it's important to figure out what ICP is, ideal customer profile. And it's not, I feel like it's not you do it one time, you're done. You do it one time, you see who's actually purchasing a product, you look at that information, and you may need to revise that, right? You should be looking at it semi-regularly. And how do you operationalize it? Again, looking at the data for sure, and seeing what's coming in, and then you route it accordingly, ideally using systems and tools to help you automate that process.
I think you're spot on, Ping. And with that, what metrics, to get more tactical for those on the call, like what metrics are you looking at specifically? So Kyle, you mentioned product data, right? Somebody's using this in like a PLG motion. You can tell who's using it, what companies are coming from to sign up. What other data do you use to kind of identify who is that right person? Not just the purchaser that signs the check, but who's involved in that buying group?
Yeah, I think the buying center today is more challenging than ever, right? We have CFOs that are scrutinizing 15K deals, and the amount of hands that are in a singular transaction continues to grow. And so it's interesting because you may not want to talk to an individual contributor today, but we're having success coming in that door to spark up a conversation, getting the relevant information to then bring up the chain. And so it's been a really interesting journey. I think a lot of what we're looking at and trying to best understand is what folks are engaging with our content, who's landing on our website, how long are they there, have they opened emails, are they taking a demo, are they willing to take a trial, and we're really gathering all of that information. So it's a lot. Again, thankful that we have the technology to do the heavy lifting, but that's what our team is being alerted on and spending the most time staying focused on.
Nice. And Ping, from a RevOps standpoint, does your organization own that in your company, or is that a marketing effort, or is it a sales-led effort? How's that work out? And then Scott, I'm coming to you. You're back online, sir.
Yeah, marketing RevOps together and kind of sending the information to sales when the timing is right. We, at least here, we don't quite have some of what I'm seeing more basic structure set up yet, but we have intent. We're sending those intent data across the board to sales so they know when and who to follow up with. And yeah, we have some correct toolings there. It's a matter of making sure that they are all collated accordingly.
Absolutely. And Scott, just to bring you up, we were talking more on the segmentation, right? How do you identify the personas that are going to be in that buying group, the right accounts, the right industries? What are some of the strategies you're using today? And how do you expand that buying group? Kyle talked about, I'm talking to everyone from individual contributors to the CFO, because it could be any of those people that are either influencing or championing a deal, or possibly blocking it. What's been your experience, and also give us a little bit about your background and kind of your point of view.
Yeah, sorry about that. Jared was in here and he pulled the plug out of my computer right before this. So really apologize to the group that he's really trying to screw with us on this thing. Yeah, so thanks. So yeah, I'm Scott, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Praxian. I've been a CRO for tech companies for about 20 years and taken a lot of that experience into helping our clients now. So to that, and I'll connect the dots there, Tim. Again, apologies about the delay for everyone here with me getting back on. My company, Praxian, we help founders develop realistic revenue goals. So part of the challenge with that is to try and get through this buying group to be able to reach some of those revenue goals. With that, we also help build out the teams to achieve those goals. So the revenue teams include sales, marketing, customer success specifically. And we just launched the first revenue guidance platform, which allows a lot of founders to come in and really for free to check out if you're on track with what your goals are. So certainly anyone who's paying attention right now and watching, feel free to go to our site and check that out. But back to what you were saying, and sorry, I'm sure I have lots of similar things to say that Kyle did, so I'll try to not repeat what I didn't hear when I wasn't on here. But I think certainly from my experience with just doing this for companies and now working with companies trying to get into these buyers, it really is a massive team approach. We've certainly learned that if you think you have the ultimate buyer at a company, you got to have some backups, because people leave. Right? They go on to other roles in the company, they go on to other companies, and you can't really put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to, looking at those buyers. And then also there's just, even if they're not a part of the overall direct decision-making process, as we all know, we have influencers in our lives and in our businesses. So it's important that we always teach, and I do, get into anybody who might be an influencer in the company, get in front of them, let them know what we're doing, what our technology is all about. Again, we know that people talk on AirMeet or on Zooms or in the hallways about different things. When it's a new type of technology you're trying to sell into a company, you want as many people in that company talking about you when you're going there to ask for money and ask for that contract to get signed.
I think you call out something that's been really interesting, especially in B2B sales, is that feeling of like, I almost have to sway company culture a little bit. I almost have to build champions at now all stratas of the organization, compared to just before. It was like, I can go in, I can talk to the VP of sales, they can get this done. Well, now there's so many layers. Ping is going to be in the RevOps side going, wait, we've got to be able to implement this into our stack. We've got to get it enabled. Kyle's going to say, hey, timeout. I've got my sales team that needs to get trained on this. We need to be able to use it. Marketing's going to have to tie into it. All of those purchase decisions now are becoming so much more complex. There was a gentleman, Brent Adams, that I talked to a while back, and he was talking about like kind of 5 things you have to align on. And it was tactics. So what are you going to do, right? The timeline, how are you going to get it done? It was metrics of like measurement. And then there were 2 others. So I'm going to have to direct everybody on this one to go find him on LinkedIn. But it just made it clear how hard it is to get a deal done in today's world. What are some tricks in terms of working as one team that you've seen work successfully? Who are some of your allies in sales? Who are some of the teams, let's start internally, that maybe cause bigger challenges? What are some experiences? And I'll just open that up to the group.
So I would just say really quick, going off of what I was saying before, that certainly from the internal aspect, like people in Ping's role are really, really important because there's just a lot of details. And I think, I'm sure Kyle, you experienced this too, as I have, in terms of going out to people and every portion of the deal really matters. And you only get so many times to be in front of the right audiences to make those decisions. And if you need to deal with like the ops part of it, you need to deal with, like, again, we might have been talking about earlier about with legal and different things, you have to make sure that you have a framework to go about it. And every company is a little bit different, like you said, Tim. And sometimes you can get some internal advocates for you that can be talking on Slack, or can be really like sort of selling this internally. But you really need to go into the sale understanding who all the people are that are a part of that process, and making sure that you're hitting all those people in the right way so that there aren't any gaps. Because again, we're not only trying to close deals, we're trying to close deals in certain months or certainly in certain quarters. And those things lead out into the next quarter or the next year sometimes, when you don't really know all the parties that are part of it. So you really need to do that discovery at the beginning of the process as you're going through the sale to really understand how they make decisions.
I think what's interesting.
Yeah, and I also feel like.
Go ahead, Ping.
Go ahead, Kyle. You go. Oh, okay. I also feel like at the early on, Scott, you mentioned discovery. That's definitely very important. Maybe at that stage, that's where you should have done your homework beforehand, kind of figure out who the key players are, and maybe even mention to the first person you're chatting with, hey, I found this, is this the right person? I think this person needs to be included for that. Are we aligned? And I recently went through, I was on the buyer side. I wasn't the champion per se, but the seller on the vendor side actually reached out to me by LinkedIn saying, hey, I've been speaking with your team, and kind of getting me in the loop already. Thankfully, my team already kept me in the loop. I actually really liked that experience from this specific vendor. I thought he did a really good job there as a seller. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, I was just going to share, I think the emphasis on discovery in 2023, it's really changed the way that we view driving transactions. And when I say that, what I mean by that is it's no longer a tool, getting into the tech stack because the VP of sales thinks it's cool and thinks it might help. And that's no longer the game, right? Mm-hmm. And so I do think it's important to not only understand the broader business initiatives and how your technology plays into some of those metrics, but also getting from the ground up, like, what are these salespeople actually struggling with? Because if you're talking to a champion or an influencer, they're not going to give you the nitty gritty of the day-to-day life of the struggles that their team is facing. And so on the sales development side of the house, really going deep and understanding the way in which those salespeople, as an example, view the world, and then how your technology plays into the broader business initiative. I think that in prior years, we rushed discovery because we could. No longer is that the game. And so I think having a broader emphasis on discovery, having a framework, as Scott has mentioned, is no longer a nice to have, but it's a need to have in this economy.
I think spot on. And Gina, you've jumped on. I'm sure there's some questions coming on, but then Kyle, I want to continue on this point because I think you just identified a trend that is spot on for what's changing in the dynamics of the market today. Gina.
Yeah, so we had a question from Chris Roos. He asked, what does the panel feel about the accuracy of tools such as Zoom Info and Apollo when they identify buyer intent signals and the individuals that are on the buying committee?
I'm curious. Scott, I saw you smiling, Ping. You've got definitely from a RevOps view, so maybe from some different perspectives, not calling out any tools, but curious your thoughts on it.
Tools are great. They're not perfect. We shouldn't 100% rely on tools. Depending on what kind of data you're looking for, sometimes you do need a combination of tools to get to the 95%, not even 100%. Not naming names.
Scott, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that tools are important and you can't have all of them. So we know the names that are in that group, along with Zoom info too, that provide some data. We're in a unique time too, that with the addition of AI and how that can really supercharge a lot of these tools. I think the tools that are gonna be the best for all of us in RevOps, sales, just really trying to generate new business, are going to be the ones that adopt, some form of AI to make those tools more effective and efficient for us as the end users. And so I really think that what I thought were great tools last year and provided a lot of detail and data may not be the best tools, as Kyle was saying, in 2023. It's a different ballgame now. So I think we really need to see how this continues to shake out and who's going to really take a hold of new tech that's making these tools much more powerful.
I agree with that. Definitely. We're on for a lot of innovation. The one hot take I'll have is I've spent the last about 7 years in this space on the marketing side and the product marketing side. And what I'm finding is we make a lot of decisions based off of lagging indicators, things that to me are like old news or kind of driving the car out of the rear view mirror, and broad generalizations. And I think what's different is there's two places I would challenge people to look for data like this. One, it's get the contact information somehow, right? Because you got to get attention and just get in front of somebody. So that's the first challenge you gotta solve for. I think a lot of these have given us now that person's email address, or I know where their LinkedIn profile is, or have their phone number. So now I got to get their attention. Where I think we're struggling is it's at that point that we should be really good at getting a read on somebody, because I think the intent signals that we go off of are really stale or really old. Now, maybe at an account level, great, but that's a needle in a haystack if you're selling to the enterprise. And you could be just looking at that because it was talked about in a meeting one day as who knows what, right? And so 10 or 12 people at a company went and Googled the account. But I think we have to be able to get a read more in real time of like where somebody sits in their buying journey, and not be looking so much like in the past. That's my hot take on it. And I think like if we can get there, we're going to help sellers a lot more than going after like false positives. Kyle, I'd be curious because you've spent a lot of time in this. I know, that's a background of yours and kind of, so in the sales process, any ideas there or thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Tim. I think, everything we're talking about, it all revolves around transparency, right? Trust is so up in the air. I think sales and marketing alignment has struggled over the past few years. And so every decision that we're making needs to be around transparent data. And so when you start talking about different tools and intent signals and things of that nature, I think that's one piece of the pie directionally, but it isn't the end all be all answer. And I'm not just talking about like trust with your prospects, internal trust as well, like what we're actually teeing up to our teams, right? Explaining clearly why are we running with this initiative all the way through the different management layers so that everybody's on board with a common objective. But I think, things are changing so quickly that there is no one signal today that we can all rely on that says, hey, by the way, this is who your next customer is going to be, unless you do a deep analysis historically looking at why did buyers convert all the way down the funnel. And so, it's an interesting topic. I think it's going to be ever changing. And I think it's critical that regardless of the tools that you have in your stack, the overall narrative has to be centered around transparency of data.
Being able to get an aligned view and a real view of what's going on, I think is critical. I'd be curious, as we move into the future of group selling. So you have a team on one side, right? That's you've got product, you've got a seller, you've got marketing, all supporting to go after an account. So there's a lot of coordination there. How do you keep that coordination internally? And then I guess on the other side, how do you help your buying group coordinate as well? We talked about that a little bit more. So I'm going to start first, like, how do you coordinate that team selling internally? How do you get everybody on the same page? How do you create that transparency?
Ping. We use Ping. He's the guy that keeps us all talking. right? Because you guys know this. I'm sure everyone deals with this, right? Like in terms of product and sales, come on. Like we try and get along. We're not always going to get along. Product is building what they think needs to be built, and oftentimes they're very good. But sometimes, we on the sales side of things, we hear what the needs are, and we need to have some sort of compromise to kind of come together on that first and foremost. But then RevOps, come on, Ping, you run that show, right?
on the sales and product side, you brought a good point, Scott, which is why we have invested in a co-recording software where it's not, hey, product, it's not just what we are saying as sales reps. Listen to this yourself. I'm going to send you a snippet right there, boom. And here at Leapsome, we are big Slack users. We use Slack often, all the time, constantly. That's how we keep each other on the same page. And I know this is not necessarily answering a good question, but going back to the buyer process, making sure that everybody is on the same page on the buyer process and who has to do what along that process, who needs to be included, who is responsible for each stage. That's how you keep everybody on the same page. First, get buy-in, right? Then make sure that you can enforce that whole process. How did I do, Scott?
I mean, Pink's done great. So,
Gina, you're back. You must have more questions for us.
I am, guys. This question comes from Amir. He said, please guide me how to develop business for HubSpot in the real estate vertical specifically. Please share some ideas. He said he's in the Middle East, i.e. specifically Dubai. So any thoughts, panel?
Pick up the phone.
Sorry?
Pick up the phone.
The phones are alive and well, Amir.
That is true.
There you go.
We did have another one from Cynthia. She says, what are your immediate thoughts when you see leads for marketing, plus or minus?
I'm going to let that one
what
go.
What does that mean, leads for marketing?
Cynthia,
like
can you
MQL.
expand a little bit?
Yeah. Probably, yeah. I think, Scott, to your point, it's like the MQL, the quality of it. Is it a plus minus? Do we like them? Do we not? Kyle, I'm curious. Do you have a good partnership with marketing?
Yeah, I have a great partnership with marketing. And again, I think that relationship is critical to any go-to-market success, right? If something's going super well, celebrate it, let them know early. If it's not, be transparent. I think at the end of the day, you're on the same team, and establishing that relationship with your go-to-market partner is critical. I will say, I think, again, it comes back to, like, we often see organizations that haven't updated their MQL definition in years. It's a different world. It's a different ballgame. Things are changing. It's something that you always have to be peeping under the hood and reevaluating. But I think the actual partnership with marketing and sales needs to be built on trust, because as soon as you lose a salesperson's trust, it's really hard to get it back, no matter how good they are.
That's a good take. Now, I'd be curious, because from the marketing side, I always feel like, sales, you want to talk to the CRO or the VP of sales, the decision maker. And you of course want a budget to be established, and you want an opportunity to basically be created, right? That's kind of the, hey, there should be somebody who's interested in our product and then, yeah, I want to talk to them. How do you bridge that awkward, uneasy, something we all talk about or don't talk about in organizations but causes friction gap? What are some ways you either get that out in the air or close that gap? Scott,
I think yeah, I think Kyle said it. Obviously, like it's critical to have that trust. And Tim, from your role within marketing, that trust is key. But I think the other thing is managing expectations, right? Like there's too many salespeople that come into an organization and kind of think, well, all right, I've been selling for a few years, so I'm going to come in and I'm just basically going to hang out until marketing serves up these leads on a silver platter for me. I'm just going to close deals. And I don't know about you guys, but I've never been in a company, I don't care how big it was, even if it was like an Adobe, where we just were doing 100% on inbound marketing, like great MQL. So I think having that trust, as Kyle said, and then again, managing expectations of what you as a salesperson should be expecting from the marketing team and how to work together to make sure that you've got the right tech that you're using, you're following up the right way, and you're really just in a good place to understanding. Because I also agree, as Kyle said, like once a marketer, like salespeople are pretty powerful if they're good and they're fed enough, and then they'll go out there and do some of their own prospecting too. Pretty powerful. But once you lose trust between sales and marketing, like a key salesperson and marketing, that's a crap scenario. Like it's hard to come back from that for marketing especially. So I think that managing of expectations is what I would definitely do, along with just building that trust.
Yeah, and also I want to add to that a feedback loop as well, right? Like this is going to be a potentially a controversial statement. If there's no marketing, there's no sales, right? If there's no demand, there's no sales, right? But then it's not just a one-way conversation. Marketing provides the lead, sales gets it, sales needs to provide the feedback back to marketing. So it's a learning process as well for both parties.
Yeah, it's never. I just wanted to add, I think, Scott, your point around managing expectations. You know, if the inbound floodgates are not open and reps don't have 3 to 5 demos a day consistently, I think the reality is they still want to be talking to the right people at the right companies, regardless of whether or not they only downloaded an ebook, right? But being transparent around they only downloaded an ebook, they're not showing up to a demo because they're deep in the evaluation process of a new tool is critical. It's not about the MQL itself. It's about how marketing is positioning that lead. And so, you know, Ping, that kind of rounds it out, right? Which is the feedback loop, sales being vocal around like, hey, appreciate you sending this over, had a great conversation. However, they are super early in the process. Here's why I think, and then continuing to drive forward as a team.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Definitely important on the intent and kind of that lead source, right? Like where are they coming from, and meet them where they are in their journey. Because to your point, I think that's too often marketing hands stuff over and sales doesn't meet that buyer where they are. And it goes into a question I just saw from Ashley Black, which is how you gain a buyer's trust, right? So she's trying to gain the trust of her buyers. She's saying her product is cheaper and 70 to 80% is good. So you have a cheaper product, you're almost as comparable in the market. How do you build buyer trust?
Can I say something there? I want to add a little story to that as well. Definitely don't try to sell them what you think is extra and they should like it from your perspective. And I'm going to throw a little story there. I do have a little 6-year-old. I do enjoy baking and making cakes. I did make one for his 6th birthday. His request was cream puff, basic cream puff with chocolate sauce on top. I thought I would go above and beyond by doing something amazing. I went and made something called a croquembouche. I don't know if I'm butchering the name, but it's basically cream puff all stacked together, kind of glued together by caramel. I made the caramel as well. To me, it looked impressive. I'm like, you're going to love this. He did not love it. I thought I went above and beyond and did extra for him. I did the opposite. He said, that's nice, but I didn't ask for this. So I think, from that perspective, I lost his confidence. How do you build buyer's confidence? Don't do that. If they have a pain, address that pain. Don't go pain, and then this extra bells and whistles. Not yet.
Hey, Ping, I'm in New York, and you just made me really hungry. It's like 3:30 here, so appreciate that.
Come on over.
No, that was great. That was great. And I would also I would say to what Ashley is saying, because I've been in these areas where you're much better, but you're much more expensive than a lot of like what I used to refer to the competitors as like ankle biters. And what ends up happening with this is sometimes you have to let them fail, right? And I've always worked with my sales teams on making sure, like, look, it's okay. We're going to lose out on some deals initially because people are just going to come in and offer something that they are saying is competitive or comparable to our offering, but it's much, much cheaper and we can only go so low. Like it can't become a top of conversation about price all the time. And so sometimes you just have to let them fail. But what I set up our prospects to do and to understand is, okay, go try them out. Try out that much less expensive tool or solution. But let me explain to you the differences you're going to see. I know the competitive landscape. I know our product. Make sure you're getting A, B, and C. And if you aren't, I'm going to follow up with you at the end of this month, at the end of next month, and give them a plan that you're going to be there for them. You're going to follow up with them, and there are outs. And I would give them that guidance. Like, look, go with them, try them out, get it out, whatever it is, like a month to month, a 3-month out, whatever it may be. The cheaper competitors will do that because they're desperate for deals. Get it out there and keep on top of them. They will eventually come back. And any good companies that I've worked for with great technology, we've just stayed on top of those folks. We've won deals back. We've just done great marketing campaigns to do like win back deals. And you end up really ultimately driving them out of business because they can't maintain it at that price point.
That's a great call, Scott. Gina, you're back. You must have more questions.
I do. We're having a lot of engagement from the audience, so thank you guys so much. So we had one from Yulari. If I mispronounce your name, sincerely apologize. But they have put, with buyer groups getting bigger, does the ticket size need to get bigger as well to justify the added cost and customer acquisition? And we also had another question after that from Yana. So I'll let you guys answer that, and then we'll move on to the next one.
I think to me, it's like the buying group getting bigger just means there's more complexity. It's harder to win deals, and more deals are going to go to indecision. But the reality is for a seller, what's tough about that is they need to probably engage later in the deal. And I think buyers are even deciding for sellers to engage later in the deal. And so marketing has to really step up and educate the market as a whole and build that demand. I think someone said it was like, marketing's got to build demand. Sales has to go capture that demand. But I think it doesn't have to mean that you have to sell a bigger deal. It just means you have to go to market differently.
I also think it's critical to recognize where we are today. I'm of the belief that 2023 is the year of the logo capture for the companies that are going to make it through this whole thing and take off in years to come. And so as it pertains to like the size of the actual buying group, does the ticket size have to match to justify CAC? Not today. I think that short-term or short-sighted organizations may have a different view there. But for folks that are in it for the long haul, I think it's the year of the logo capture and then being able to deliver tremendous value on the back end.
I agree with you on that, Kyle. And the only other thing I would say is it's also the year to go deeper with current customers. Like now's the time to really expand in and deepen those relationships.
Couldn't agree.
And one other thing, sorry, Gina, just one other thing I would just say to that too is when you said that, Tim, about going deeper with your current customers, referrals. Yep. Like it's also the year for referrals. If you're treating your customers well and you have a good priced solution, ask them. If they like you, they will refer you to other people. So you just really need to make sure that you're asking for the business because otherwise they'll bring the business somewhere else.
And just to add to that as well, it's also following your key champions because they will move organizations, maintain that good relationship. And when they move, reach out to them again. Hey, does this company also have the same need? That can be pretty powerful. We have a few sales won because of that.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I agree 1000%. I used to be an SDR, by the way. So I was on the selling side working directly with marketing demand gen. So I can actually speak to some of this stuff personally. But moving on to Yana's question panel. Do you have any examples of how marketing can communicate buyer intent at the time the lead is passed to sales? Do you use MQL scores or have a defined list of key intent states?
So I think teams can even do better than that to some extent. Now, the MQL to sales is really tough, but I think any other place in the handoff, anytime you've had interaction with somebody like live or on video or over a call or any of those, the two things that we've been focused a lot on at Uniphore has been sentiment and engagement. And we did a study with about 950 sellers and buyers at enterprise companies. And the craziest thing was that when your sentiment is high and your engagement is high, the correlation to making a buying decision is huge. And when your sentiment or engagement drops, the correlation to not purchasing is the same way. Like, it is literally as if you're just back and forth on the top, you know. And so if you can get a read on your buyer's sentiment and engagement, I think, to me, that is right now the most telling thing. And then trying to figure out a way to monitor that through the buying process is the best read you can get of whether someone's got a propensity to buy or not. I think a lot of the other intent signals, they give you a general, maybe hot or cold, but I think they're tough to read.
I think it's a hot topic too, right? Because when I think about scoring, I, as a seller, when I see a 98 in my Salesforce dash and on an account, and I reach out to that lead, or however you guys have scoring set up, and I find out it's a bank, and we don't sell to banks, yet marketing is scoring that thing a 98, right? I'm immediately losing trust. And so I think it has to revolve around transparency. Why is this scored a 98? Help me better understand where they're coming from. And so I think, to Yana's, was it Yana? Yeah, Yana's question. There needs to be some sort of trust between sales and marketing, and that feedback loop that Ping was talking about is critical to continue to iterate on that definition and on, what does a 98 actually mean?
Yeah, just to add to that, Kyle, the transparency bit for sure. In my previous company, we shared how each step of the way, like how many scores each action would add to for a specific account, for a specific contact. And we encourage that feedback loop for sure. It's not a secret. You should know how we score these. And if you don't think we're scoring it correctly, let's talk about it. Let's revise it.
Great point. We had another question from Amir. How do you manage sales anxiety?
Meds.
Me was coffee and lots of breaks.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's I don't know exactly what that's referring to in terms of whether it's sales anxiety, you're missing your number, or you don't have enough leads, or whatever it may be. I think sales and sales teams and people are sort of riddled with anxiety anyway. They're a lot of salespeople are high energy, and they have some challenges with that energy and keeping in check. But I think the best way to reduce some anxiety around the sales team and what you're doing in that process is a lot of the stuff that we've talked about is, again, having open communication, having trust with your team, knowing that the leads are coming through a certain process, and understanding that product is supportive of your mission as a sales team of what you really need to do. And you got to hit goals, and we need to have a little bit of flexibility. I think there's a lot of things in the organization, in your organization, that you can control, or your managers can help control, to reduce that anxiety, because it is a stressful, look, all jobs are stressful, especially in an environment like we're in now, but sales is always just, you're only as good as your last deal. So you could have had a great quarter last quarter, and if you're not doing stuff right now, like, everyone's looking at you like you're a loser, and you're not a loser. It's just the cycle of sales and how it goes. So I think it's up to the managers and the different team leads to make sure that you have the best environment to produce good sales.
I like what Lolly said here, that control the controllables, because I think, as leaders of teams, it's how do we remove the friction points so that you have less anxiety, right? Jump on a meeting and don't worry about taking notes. Like, don't worry about the action items. There's things like that I think AI and technology right now, some of the stuff that we've seen at Uniphore and other companies that are doing it, to make that part of it at least way easier, so that you can focus more on, hey, pay attention to just talking to the other person, listening, understanding what their wants and needs are, and worry less about the other stuff.
Yeah, and also to what, Tim, you mentioned earlier, of finding your internal allies, like who are those people? How can they help you? And again, like to what Scott said earlier, not really understanding where the anxiety is coming from. If it's about not hitting quota, it's understanding the whys, looking into the data, Like, are you making enough phone calls? Could your emails potentially be better? Is it what you're saying or what you're not saying? Do you have sufficient top of the funnel? Like understanding what you may or may not be doing and how to get better from there.
I'd add as well, I think as leaders, it's our jobs to carry a non-anxious presence, right? I think it's safe to say that the majority of your salespeople aren't working 40, 50, 60 plus hour weeks because they just want to do that and that's it. It's like everybody has a family and a life, and they're there to earn an income and support the life that they live. And so I think it's also important for us as leaders to carry a non-anxious presence through the ups and the downs, and getting to know our people personally and how they're motivated and what they're actually after. I've seen if you do that, and I've seen it done really well. Salespeople don't have to always be on edge and burnt out and stressed when they miss a quarter, because they're putting in the work. They know that you've got their back, and you're going to do everything that you can to support those efforts. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of those. Also, from an SDR standpoint, looking at sales quotas, mine was organization, structuring my day out, knowing exactly what's going to happen, lessened that anxiety tremendously on my side. Find free tools, check your tech stack. Maybe there's something that was used previous that you still have a license for that's no longer in place. Things like that. But that goes along with building those relationships within your teams as well. Asking, find a champion within your company that you feel comfortable talking to. Ashley had a question comment. She says, switching gears, do you have any best practices on establishing a referral program, especially between marketing, CS, AM, and AEs?
That's a good question. The best thing that I've seen the transparency side, the collaboration side between that, is any of your CI tools. Implementing some type of like recording and CI solution. Q for Sales is what I do, but there's a lot of other ones out there. That is, to me, like getting everybody aligned around what the person's saying on the other end of the phone or on the other meeting. Like that's how you identify who your champions really are. And then that's how you also follow those relationships and see when it's the right time to ask for a referral at any of those stages.
I know Ashley's been pretty active. I guess I'm just not sure if she's talking about referrals, meaning like, are there people in the product org or engineering org that might have contacts that could bring them to sales and they get compensated for it? Or is it external referrals? Like, are you asking your clients for referrals? Because those are two different processes to really set those things up and put best practice for us. I don't know if she's still there.
She said, customer referral program, see as asking a customer for referral.
Gotcha.
Then handing off.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously depends upon what you're selling and how much it is and what kind of add-ons you have. But certainly, like anyone would, when you're building out a business or you're trying to grow your business with existing customers, they deserve something of value for giving those referrals. And not only is it just be nice because you're our client and we work well together, sure, that relationship is important, but there are new things that are being established. There are groups that you can set up with your best customers that they can meet other customers and everything. So providing them with some incentive to give you that referral is really important. I think just asking for it might be a little short-sighted because they probably work with 10, 20, 30 tech vendors. And I think if they love using your product, that's great. But giving them and working with marketing in some respects on how to create some form of repayment for that or an incentive for them to get a referral is pretty important.
Yeah, and to just dig into like mindset a little bit, I would also add do the work through the lens that should warrant an unprompted referral. Right? Like work so hard for your customer and add so much value that it only makes sense that they would give you a referral without you even having to ask. That's a lot easier said than done, but I think that it does lead to stronger alignment between CS and product, and other parts of the go-to-market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yulari, I'm so sorry if I'm messing up your name. It commented a little while ago, that's a great point. Ping, have you operationalized this with LinkedIn sales nav triggers or similar with champions moving companies?
We use Apollo here at Leapsome. There is a feature within Apollo that allows for the tracking of movements. We are in the middle of operationalizing that step. So it's not done yet, but we are doing that.
Nice.
Beautiful. That was all of the questions and comments that I had for right now. So I will let you guys get back on track.
Perfect. With that, I mean, Gina, we're pretty much at time, a little bit more. We don't have to stretch this out too much unless we've got other questions coming from the chat. And one I just saw was actually, this is kind of a fun one to maybe end on. Is what key personality traits should a salesperson have for today?
Maybe not a personality trait, but certainly something you should always remember and think about. And you know, we're all human, and it's hard to take it this way, but it is not personal. If they are saying no to you or they're not responding to you, everyone's busy. Everyone's got stuff going on, whether it's partners, kids, cats, dogs, birds, doesn't really matter. We all have stuff going on. It is very, very, very rarely personal when they're saying no, or they're not sticking to the timeline you agree to, or whatever it may be. You have to have some really thick skin and move on to the next one. When you get a no, or you get a nothing, no response, which is the worst. I'd rather have a no than a no response. Move on to the next opportunity, move on to the next prospect, because eventually you will get a yes.
Ping, what about you?
I feel like this is something that's potentially hard to teach. So you kind of have it or you don't have it. Then maybe sales isn't necessarily the right thing for you. Having the drive internally, right? Like, don't take it personally for sure. You need to have the drive to get to the next thing, to get there to your target, to your quota.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation for sure. Kyle.
Yeah, I'd add EQ over IQ.
Yeah.
And just having an understanding that corporations cut checks, but people buy your products. Get to know the people, and you'll find yourself in more interesting conversations.
Yeah, I think you took the words out of my mouth, which is, you know, people still buy from people they trust and companies they believe in at the end of the day. And I think that is built on that empathy, that EQ. And I think we brought it up a long time ago. It was, at the end of the day, people want to be heard. They want to be understood. That's how they buy. That's how they get interested in a product. It's not what we say to pitch them, but how we make them, you know, feel and feel understood.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more. You know, what do? You buy somewhere you trust. So building that relationship and building that trust is absolutely critical. We did have one more question from Ross. He said, "Hi, everyone. Enjoying the discussion. Outside of asking sellers to list every single contact on an opportunity in CRM, what effective ways have you found to show that more contacts equal better outcomes?"
Shameless plug for our solution. We actually do a buyer map that shows the sentiment and engagement. I mean, you teed that up perfectly. I apologize, but over the life cycle of a deal, we actually, everybody that's involved in that deal, based on your calendar, your meetings, your emails, not just based on tagging them in CRM, we map that in a 2x2. And this is Q for Sales by Uniphore is what it's called. I see that ask in the solution. And we literally can map who your champions are, who your detractors are, based on their sentiment and engagement levels over the life cycle of the deal. That's been a huge help for us. Yeah.
Get into Tim's funnel. Try out Uniphore.
I hate to shamelessly plug that, but it's a good use case.
Yeah, we track that as well here at Leapsome, where, you know, how multi-threading has actually increased in win rate. And I'm staring at the data here. If it's one contact, the win rate is pretty terrible at 4%. But once you get to 4+ contacts, that goes up to 38%.
That's amazing. Yeah, the data doesn't lie.
Numbers are always truth.
Yeah.
All right. We have one more question from Ashley. What tools are you all using to track overall metrics, things like marketing performance versus quality of leads, RevOps performance, etc.? What tools, if you have time for one more question, and what solution had you mentioned?
I think the data tracking, it's almost tool. It doesn't matter what tool you use as long as you can collate them in one place. Whether that's a CRM, whether that's like putting stuff in Tableau and visualize it that way. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Ashley, or if someone else may have more feedback there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect plug. It's what Mad Kudu is. It's what Mad Kudu does. It makes sense of historical conversions and wins. It's no longer who is my next best customer. This is your next best customer. This is what they look like. Here's where your sales team should be spending their time. Here's where marketing should be spending their money. So super interesting product. You should check it out.
Yeah. She was actually looking for that, guy. She goes, I'm thinking more tools like what you all are selling.
Get closer to your buyer, either by what they're doing or how they feel and act, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with us plugging our companies too. Again, that's what we do for a living. We're here to help each other out and help you guys out. So, that's why we spend our time talking like this, because we all have good things to offer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. That Larry said demand gen at its best, and I couldn't have agreed more. But that does bring us just about to time. So Tim, Ping, Kyle, Scott, thank you guys so much again for taking your time out of your day to join us, Rev Genius, and offer your insights and your expertise. This has been absolutely incredible. Even as a host, I love sitting in on these because I learn a lot as well that I can actually take back and put into practice. So it has been absolutely incredible. And the general consensus in the chat is much appreciated. Thank you. It's been great. So kudos to you guys. Feel free to look everybody up on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect, send connections, build that network, and let us know if you have any questions. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to our audience for taking the time out of their day to join us. And we will see you all next time.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.